Havenwood was the kind of town where everybody knew your name. It was a place where life moved at a slower pace. Neighbours greeted each other with warm smiles. Kids played freely in the streets. At the heart of this charming town stood the Havenwood Community Church, its white steeple reaching towards the sky. Leading the congregation for over 2 decades was Pastor Greg, a man known for his kind heart and unwavering faith. His sermons had a way of touching the very soul of Havenwood. He had a knack for knowing just the right words to offer comfort, guidance, or a gentle nudge in the right direction. Pastor Greg's wife, Sandra, was the picture of grace and warmth. Her gentle smile could brighten even the cloudiest of days. She was the backbone of the church, always ready with a helping hand and a listening ear. Together, they were the heart and soul of Havenwood. Cindy, in her mid-20s, is the vibrant and ambitious daughter of Pastor Greg and Sandra. She has recently returned to her hometown after completing her studies in journalism. Cindy has recently become engaged to her fiancé, Jeremy. Jeremy, in his early 30s, is a charming and enigmatic man who has recently moved to the small town. The news of Cindy and Jeremy's engagement spread through Havenwood like wildfire. Excitement filled the air as everyone eagerly awaited the upcoming celebration. Cindy's happiness was contagious, her smile brighter than ever as she shared the news with her friends and family. Sandra, overjoyed at the prospect of her only daughter's happiness, threw herself into planning the perfect wedding. The church hall buzzed with activity as the community came together to create a memorable day for Cindy and Jeremy. Sandra made sure every detail was perfect, from the flower arrangements to the delicate lace on the wedding cake. Pastor Greg, beaming with pride, couldn't wait to officiate the ceremony for his beloved daughter and her future husband. He saw in Jeremy a kind heart and a genuine love for Cindy. He often shared stories of their love with his congregation, praising the young couple for their commitment to each other and their faith. The weeks leading up to the wedding were filled with joy and anticipation. Havenwood buzzed with excitement, everyone eager to witness the union of 2 souls deeply in love. Cindy and Jeremy were the epitome of happiness, their love story a shining beacon of hope and promise. But beneath the surface of their perfect romance, a storm was brewing, threatening to shatter the idyllic peace of Havenwood. As the weeks flew by, a subtle shift began to occur in Havenwood. Whispers of unease replaced the joyful anticipation of the upcoming wedding. Cindy, blinded by love, was oblivious to the subtle changes in Jeremy's behaviour. She dismissed his late nights and evasive answers as stress from work. Pastor Greg, however, couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't quite right. He noticed Jeremy's increasing absences from church events and the way his eyes darted nervously around the room when questioned. Sandra, ever the optimist, attributed Jeremy's behaviour to pre-wedding jitters, but Pastor Greg couldn't shake off the growing sense of unease. One Sunday after service, Mrs. Patterson, a kindly old woman from the congregation, pulled Pastor Greg aside. She confided in him her concern about seeing Jeremy with a group of rough-looking individuals outside the local bar. Pastor Greg, his heart sinking, thanked Mrs. Patterson for her concern and promised to look into it. The thought of Jeremy being involved in anything untoward gnawed at Pastor Greg's conscience. He knew he couldn't ignore the growing number of red flags. Jeremy's charming facade seemed to be slipping, revealing glimpses of a darker side that sent shivers down Pastor Greg's spine. He resolved to confront Jeremy, hoping to uncover the truth before it was too late. The weight of his suspicions pressed heavily on Pastor Greg's mind. He found himself struggling to concentrate on his sermons, his thoughts constantly returning to Jeremy's strange behaviour. The once familiar routines of church life now felt heavy with unspoken tension. Sandra noticed her husband's distraction, his usual jovial demeanour replaced by a preoccupied frown. She tried to talk to him to offer comfort and reassurance, but Pastor Greg hesitated to share his concerns with her. He didn't want to worry Sandra unnecessarily, especially with the wedding preparations in full swing. Cindy, too, sensed a change in her father's demeanour. She noticed his lingering glances at Jeremy, his forced smiles, and his uncharacteristic silence during family dinners. When she questioned him, Pastor Greg simply patted her hand and assured her everything was fine. Despite his attempts to hide his suspicions, Pastor Greg's unease was palpable. His silence spoke volumes, casting a shadow of doubt over the once joyous atmosphere. The seed of suspicion had been planted, and it was slowly taking root, threatening to poison the happiness that had once filled the Havenwood parsonage. Determined to get to the bottom of the mystery surrounding Jeremy, Pastor Greg decided to pay a visit to the Elm Street Diner. It was a local haunt, frequented by the town's residents for its hearty breakfasts and steaming mugs of coffee. More importantly, it was the place where Mrs. Patterson had spotted Jeremy with the unsavoury characters. The diner's owner, a burly man named Frank with a heart of gold, greeted Pastor Greg with a warm smile. Frank had been a pillar of the Havenwood community for years, his diner a hub for local gossip and friendly banter. Pastor Greg, feeling a pang of guilt for resorting to such tactics, ordered a cup of coffee and discreetly steered his conversation with Frank towards Jeremy. Frank hesitated for a moment, torn between his loyalty to his customers and his respect for Pastor Greg. He finally sighed and confirmed Mrs. Patterson's account. He had indeed seen Jeremy at the diner, not once but several times, always accompanied by a group of shady-looking individuals. Frank had overheard snippets of their conversations, mentioning deals, debts, and other unsettling topics. Pastor Greg's heart sank as he listened to Frank's words, his worst fears seemingly confirmed. He thanked Frank for his honesty, leaving him with a troubled mind and a heavy heart. As he walked back to his car, the weight of his discovery pressed down on him. He knew he had to confront Jeremy, but the thought of what he might uncover filled him with dread. Later that evening, Pastor Greg found himself pacing anxiously in his study, his mind racing with conflicting thoughts. He had called Jeremy, asking him to come to the parsonage, without revealing the reason for the meeting. The air in the room felt thick with anticipation, the silence punctuated by the ticking of the grandfather clock in the corner. When Jeremy arrived, his face was etched with a mixture of confusion and apprehension. He had grown accustomed to Pastor Greg's warm welcome and words of wisdom. The stern expression on the pastor's face immediately told him that something was amiss. "Jeremy," Pastor Greg began, his voice heavy with disappointment, "I'm not going to beat around the bush. I've heard some things about you, things that trouble me deeply." Without mentioning any names, he recounted the conversations he had had with Mrs. Patterson and Frank, his voice trembling with a mixture of anger and concern. Jeremy's face paled as he listened to Pastor Greg's accusations. He stammered, attempting to deny the allegations, but the words seemed to catch in his throat. Pastor Greg, his heart sinking at the sight of Jeremy's obvious discomfort, pressed on, demanding an explanation. Jeremy's shoulders slumped as the weight of Pastor Greg's words sank in. He knew he couldn't keep up the charade any longer. The truth, however shameful, had to come out. He took a deep breath and confessed to everything. The cocaine addiction he had been battling for years, the debts he had accrued, even the affair he had gotten himself entangled in with Genevieve, the pharmacist who supplied him with narcotic drugs. Jeremy's voice cracked as he begged Pastor Greg for understanding, for a chance to make things right. He swore that his love for Cindy was real, that she was the best thing that had ever happened to him. He claimed that he had been sober for a year, but the pressure of their upcoming wedding and the fear of tainting her with his dark past had driven him back to his old ways. Pastor Greg listened, his face a mask of disappointment and anger, his heart heavy with a mixture of pity and fury. He had always prided himself on his ability to see the good in people, to offer forgiveness and guidance. But this betrayal cut deep, leaving him struggling to reconcile the charming young man he thought he knew with the addict who stood before him. The air in the study crackled with unspoken tension. The only sound was the ticking of the grandfather clock in the corner, each tick a stark reminder of the precious time that was slipping away. Pastor Greg knew he had a decision to make, one that would impact not only his family but the entire community of Havenwood. Unbeknownst to Jeremy and Pastor Greg, Cindy had returned home early from a visit with a friend. Drawn by the sound of raised voices coming from her father's study, she had quietly approached the door, her heart pounding with a sense of dread. What she overheard shattered her world into a million pieces. Cindy listened in disbelief as Jeremy confessed his addiction and infidelity, her own heart breaking with each painful revelation. The man she loved, the man she had promised to spend the rest of her life with, had betrayed her in the worst way possible. The life she had envisioned, the future she had so carefully planned, crumbled before her eyes before it even started. Unable to bear it any longer, Cindy burst into the room, her face a mask of anguish. Tears streamed down her face as she confronted Jeremy, her voice trembling with a mixture of heartbreak and anger. She threw the engagement ring at him, the diamond catching the light as it clattered onto the floor, a cruel reminder of the shattered promises. Jeremy, his face pale and drawn, reached out to Cindy, his voice hoarse with remorse. He tried to explain, to apologize, but words failed him. The look of utter betrayal in Cindy's eyes mirrored the storm raging within her. There was no justification, no excuse for the pain he had inflicted. The silence that followed was deafening. Pastor Greg, his heart aching for his daughter, gently led Cindy out of the study, leaving Jeremy standing alone, the weight of his actions crashing down upon him. Cindy was sobbing uncontrollably. Sandra, her face etched with worry and sadness, followed her husband and daughter, her gaze lingering on Jeremy for a brief, heart-wrenching moment. News of Jeremy's betrayal spread through Havenwood like wildfire. The community, once abuzz with excitement for the upcoming wedding, was now reeling in shock and disbelief. The idyllic image of the happy couple was replaced by whispers of pity, anger, and judgment. The wedding was cancelled. The invitations, once symbols of hope and promise, now painful reminders of a love lost. Sandra, her heart breaking for her daughter, worked tirelessly to dismantle the wedding arrangements, each removed decoration a poignant symbol of shattered dreams. The Havenwood Community Church, once a sanctuary of peace and joy, now felt heavy with unspoken tension. The congregation, deeply invested in Cindy's happiness, struggled to reconcile their faith in forgiveness with the anger and betrayal they felt on her behalf. The scandal had cast a long shadow over Havenwood, leaving its residents to grapple with the painful reality of broken vows and the long road to healing. Jeremy decided to leave town and attend a residential treatment centre to treat his addiction to drugs and sex. The days that followed his departure were the darkest the Havenwood parsonage had ever seen. Cindy, her heart broken, withdrew into herself, seeking solace in her grief. The once vibrant young woman was now a shadow of her former self, her laughter silenced, her eyes reflecting a pain that cut Pastor Greg and Sandra to their core. Pastor Greg, his spirit shaken, found himself questioning his faith, his belief in the inherent goodness of humanity, tested like never before. He felt responsible for bringing Jeremy into their lives, for failing to see through his charming facade. The weight of his guilt pressed down on him, compounding the pain of his daughter's heartbreak. Sandra, her usual optimism dimmed by the shadow that had fallen over their family, tried her best to hold the pieces together. She offered words of comfort to Cindy, cooked her favourite meals and sat with her in silence, sharing her pain. Yet, she couldn't shake the feeling of helplessness, the fear that her daughter might never fully recover from this betrayal. The once happy home was now filled with a palpable tension, the air thick with unspoken words and suppressed emotions. Pastor Greg and Sandra, their own hearts heavy with grief, struggled to find a way back to the light, to guide their daughter and themselves out of the darkness that had enveloped their lives. Cindy found herself seeking solace in the familiar rhythms of nature. She spent hours wandering through the nearby woods, the gentle rustling of leaves and the sweet songs of birds offering a sense of peace that eluded her within the confines of her home. One sunny afternoon, she found herself drawn to the Havenwood Community Garden, a place she and her mother had nurtured together for years. The garden, usually a riot of colour and life, seemed to reflect the sombre mood that had settled over her. As Cindy knelt down, her fingers sinking into the cool, damp soil, she felt a glimmer of hope flicker within her. The garden, a testament to the cyclical nature of life, reminded her that even after the harshest winters, spring inevitably returns, bringing with it the promise of new beginnings. She began to weed and water the neglected plants, her movements mechanical at first, but gradually becoming more purposeful. As she worked, she thought about her conversation with her father. He had reminded her of the importance of forgiveness, not for Jeremy, but for herself. About 10 months later, Jeremy returned to Havenwood. He had successfully completed a residential treatment program, his addiction under control. He had also ended his affair and was committed to making amends for his past mistakes. He sought out Pastor Greg, hoping for a chance to apologize to Cindy and perhaps, one day, earn her forgiveness. Pastor Greg, though still hurt and angered by Jeremy's betrayal, recognized the genuine remorse in his eyes. He saw the effort Jeremy had put into his recovery and the humility he now carried himself with. Still, he was torn. He wanted to protect his daughter from further pain, but he also believed in the power of forgiveness. Pastor Greg shared with Cindy Jeremy's desire to see her. He didn't pressure her, but he encouraged her to at least hear what Jeremy had to say. Cindy was hesitant. Reopening old wounds was the last thing she wanted, yet a part of her yearned for closure, for a chance to voice the pain and anger that still festered within her. After much deliberation, Cindy agreed to meet with Jeremy. She knew it would not be easy, and it would most likely bring up a flood of painful memories. She realized she was still in love with him. She also recognized that in order to truly move on, she needed to confront her past and find a way to forgive. If not Jeremy, then herself, for the hurt she had carried for so long. Their first meeting was awkward. filled with silences that spoke volumes. Cindy, initially guarded, found herself surprised by Jeremy's sincerity. He didn't make excuses for his past actions. He owned his mistakes, acknowledging the pain he had caused her and her family and apologizing profusely. He spoke of his journey to sobriety, his commitment to living a life defined by honesty and integrity. Cindy listened, her heart slowly beginning to soften. She saw the changes in Jeremy, the remorse etched on his face, the genuine desire to make amends. She wasn't ready to forget what happened, not yet, but in his eyes she saw a glimmer of hope, a possibility for healing, not just for him, but for herself as well. As the sun began to set, casting a warm glow over Havenwood, Cindy and Jeremy knew they had a long road ahead. The damage had been done, the trust broken. But in that moment of shared vulnerability, there was a flicker of hope, a fragile ember of understanding that perhaps, just perhaps, forgiveness and redemption were within reach. After that first meeting, they parted ways, not as lovers, but as two souls forever bound by a shared past, each taking tentative steps towards a future where healing and hope might bloom again. Life in Havenwood gradually found its rhythm again. The initial shock of Jeremy's betrayal had since subsided, replaced by a quiet acceptance of the past. Cindy, though still carrying the scars of heartbreak, began to emerge from the shadows, her inherent strength and resilience shining through. Sandra, ever the supportive mother, encouraged Cindy to rediscover her passions. She nudged her back into her writing, reminding her of the joy it brought her. Cindy, hesitant at first, found solace in weaving words, her emotions pouring onto the pages of the novel she was writing, transforming pain into poignant prose. The Havenwood Community Church became a sanctuary for Cindy, a place of solace and support. Pastor Greg's sermons, now tinged with a deeper understanding of human frailty and the complexities of forgiveness, resonated with a renewed sense of purpose. He spoke of second chances, of the transformative power of grace, his words offering comfort not just to his congregation but to himself as well. Life wasn't easy, but Cindy found strength in the love of her family and the unwavering support of her community. She focused on rebuilding her life piece by piece, embracing the healing power of time and drawing strength from the lessons learned. A year passed. Word reached Havenwood that Jeremy had turned his life around. He had remained committed to his sobriety, regularly attending support groups and actively mentoring others battling addiction. He had found a steady job, his work ethic reflecting his newfound sense of purpose. The news of Jeremy's transformation spread through the town, sparking a mix of reactions. Some people remained skeptical, their wounds still raw from his past betrayal. Others, touched by his efforts, felt a flicker of hope, remembering the charming young man who had once stolen Cindy's heart. One evening, Pastor Greg received a letter. It was from Jeremy. In it, he expressed once again his deep remorse for the pain he had caused, while also acknowledging that he had no right to seek forgiveness. He wrote of his journey to redemption, his unwavering commitment to living a life worthy of respect. He shared his longing to return to Havenwood, not to rekindle the past, but to make amends, to show the community the transformative power of second chances. Pastor Greg wrestled with his emotions. He knew Cindy was not ready to fully forgive Jeremy, and he wouldn't force her. The decision, he realized, rested solely with her. He shared the letter with Sandra, and their conversation was filled with a mixture of apprehension and cautious optimism. The question lingered in the air. Could Havenwood find it in its heart to forgive Jeremy and offer him a chance at redemption? The news of Jeremy's letter spread through the Havenwood parsonage like wildfire. Sandra, ever the optimist, saw it as a sign of hope, a testament to the transformative power of redemption. Pastor Greg, ever the pragmatist, urged caution, reminding his family that forgiveness was a journey, not a destination. Cindy's reaction was the most complex. The initial shock of hearing Jeremy's name again after all this time was quickly replaced by a wave of conflicting emotions. Anger, hurt, and a lingering sense of betrayal battled with a flicker of curiosity, a desire to know if the man who had broken her heart had truly changed. Pastor Greg, sensing Cindy's internal struggle, suggested a gradual approach. He encouraged her to take her time, to allow herself to heal at her own pace. He reminded her that forgiveness, if it were to come, had to come from a place of genuine willingness, not obligation. Cindy, her mind in turmoil, decided to test the waters. She started by revisiting places that held special meaning for her and Jeremy. The park bench where they had shared their first kiss, the ice cream parlour where they had spent countless summer evenings. Each place brought back a flood of memories, both happy and heartbreaking, forcing her to confront the ghosts of their past. The Sunday service at Havenwood Community Church took on a special significance. Pastor Greg, inspired by Jeremy's letter and his own family's journey, chose to speak about the power of forgiveness. His words, delivered with a depth of understanding and compassion, resonated deeply within the hearts of his congregation. He spoke of forgiveness not as a sign of weakness, but as an act of courage, a conscious decision to release the bitterness of the past and embrace the possibility of healing and new beginnings. He reminded his congregation that everyone makes mistakes, that none are immune to the complexities of human nature. Cindy, sitting in the familiar pew, felt the weight of her father's words wash over her. She realized that forgiveness wasn't about condoning Jeremy's past actions, but about freeing herself from the chains of anger and resentment that had held her captive for so long. The seed of forgiveness planted that Sunday morning began to take root within Cindy's heart. It was a slow, gradual process filled with moments of doubt and uncertainty. But with each passing day, the bitterness that had once consumed her began to dissipate, replaced by a glimmer of hope, a yearning for peace. Weeks turned into months. Cindy and Jeremy began to see each other again, cautiously at first, testing the waters of a potential reconciliation. They met at neutral locations, the Havenwood Community Garden, the local library, their shared love for their hometown providing a common ground. Their conversations were filled with a mix of reminiscing and cautious exploration of their individual journeys. Jeremy spoke candidly about his struggles with addiction, his voice filled with remorse and gratitude for the second chance he had been given. Cindy shared her own path to healing, the pain of betrayal slowly giving way to a newfound sense of self-awareness and inner strength. They rediscovered their shared passions, their love for books, their passion for social justice, their deep-rooted connection to Havenwood. They volunteered together at the local soup kitchen, their shared desire to make a difference in the community forging a new bond between them. The spark that had once drawn them together began to reignite, fueled by a newfound understanding, a deep respect for the journeys they had both taken. It wasn't the same fiery passion of their youth, but a more mature, stable love, built on a foundation of honesty, vulnerability, and a shared commitment to growth. One warm summer evening, Jeremy found the courage to approach Pastor Greg and Sandra. He expressed his desire to be a part of their family again, acknowledging that he had a lot to prove. He spoke of his love for Cindy, his commitment to earning back their trust, and his hope for a future filled with love and commitment. Pastor Greg and Sandra listened intently, their hearts touched by Jeremy's sincerity. They saw the genuine remorse in his eyes, the unwavering determination to make amends for his past mistakes. They offered their blessing not as a guarantee of reconciliation, but as a testament to their belief in the power of second chances. Cindy, witnessing Jeremy's transformation and his unwavering commitment to earning back her trust, found her own heart softening. The pain of betrayal hadn't vanished entirely, but it no longer held her captive. She saw in Jeremy a man redeemed, his spirit tempered by adversity, his love for her stronger than ever. Their journey back to each other was gradual, marked by open communication, vulnerability, and a shared understanding that trust, once broken, takes time and effort to rebuild. They celebrated each milestone, every sober day, every act of kindness, every moment of shared laughter, as a testament to their commitment to a future built on a foundation of honesty and unwavering love. The news of Cindy and Jeremy's reconciliation spread through Havenwood, met with a mix of cautious optimism and quiet approval. The community, witnessing Jeremy's genuine transformation and Cindy's newfound happiness, began to open their hearts to the possibility of forgiveness and second chances. Life in Havenwood, once disrupted by betrayal and heartbreak, found its rhythm again. The annual town picnic was filled with laughter and a renewed sense of community. Children played freely in the park, their carefree joy a reminder of the simple pleasures in life. One Sunday morning at Havenwood Community Church, Pastor Greg delivered a sermon that would forever be etched in the hearts of his congregation. He spoke of the transformative power of love, the importance of forgiveness, and the enduring strength of community. As the service drew to a close, Pastor Greg invited Cindy and Jeremy to join him at the altar. Hand in hand, they faced the congregation, their faces radiating a quiet joy that spoke volumes. In that moment of shared vulnerability, Havenwood witnessed the true meaning of redemption, the power of love to heal old wounds and offer the promise of new beginnings. Pastor Greg looked out at the faces in front of him, the warm glow of the afternoon sun filtering through the stained glass church windows and softening their features. He saw a reflection of his own family's journey in their eyes, the shared experience of heartbreak, the struggle for understanding, the gradual blossoming of forgiveness. He thought back to the day Jeremy had confessed his transgressions, the air thick with disappointment and a palpable sense of betrayal. At the time, the path forward had seemed shrouded in darkness, the weight of broken vows threatening to smother the very spirit of their family. Yet, even in the darkest hours, the embers of faith had flickered. Sandra's unwavering belief in the inherent goodness within Jeremy, Cindy's courageous decision to confront her pain rather than be consumed by it, and Jeremy's tireless efforts to rebuild his life. These acts of courage had illuminated the path towards healing. As he prepared to deliver his sermon, Pastor Greg felt a profound sense of gratitude wash over him. The journey had been arduous, fraught with emotional landmines and moments of doubt, but through it all, love had persevered. Love, he realized, wasn't merely a fleeting emotion, but a force capable of weathering the fiercest storms and emerging stronger on the other side. "My friends," Pastor Greg began, his voice resonating with a depth of emotion that transcended the walls of the Havenwood Community Church. "We gather here today not just as a congregation, but as a family bound by faith, by shared experiences, and by the enduring power of forgiveness. He paused, allowing his words to settle over the hushed assembly. "Forgiveness," he continued, his gaze sweeping across the rows of attentive faces, "is often misconstrued as a sign of weakness, a passive acceptance of wrongdoing. But true forgiveness, my friends, requires immense strength. It demands that we confront our pain, acknowledge our anger, and ultimately choose to release the bitterness that can poison our hearts." He spoke of forgiveness as a gift, not just to the recipient but to the giver. When we choose to forgive, he explained, we break free from the shackles of resentment. We open ourselves up to the possibility of healing, of growth, and of rediscovering the beauty of human connection. His words hung in the air, resonating with a profound sense of truth that transcended the boundaries of language. In that moment, the Havenwood Community Church transformed into a sanctuary of shared humanity, a testament to the enduring power of forgiveness to mend even the deepest wounds. "Life," Pastor Greg continued, his voice softening, "is a tapestry woven with threads of joy and sorrow, of triumph and adversity. We cannot control the hand that deals the cards, but we can choose how we play them. We can let bitterness consume us, or we can look for glimmers of hope, even in the darkest of times." He spoke of his own family's journey, sharing their experiences with a vulnerability that resonated deeply with the congregation. He spoke of Cindy's courage, Sandra's unwavering faith, and Jeremy's extraordinary transformation, a testament to the resilience of the human spirit and the transformative power of redemption. "Hope," he emphasized, his voice filled with conviction, "is not a passive wish but an active choice. It is a choice we make every single day when we choose to see the good in others, when we choose to believe in the possibility of change, when we choose to open our hearts, even when it seems impossible." As he looked out at the faces before him, Pastor Greg saw a reflection of his own newfound understanding. Hope, he realized, was not something to be found in external circumstances, but a flame that burned brightest in the hearts of those who dared to believe in its power. "Love," Pastor Greg declared, his voice filled with a depth of emotion that resonated throughout the church, "is the greatest gift we have been given. It is the force that binds us together, that gives meaning to our lives, and that has the power to heal even the deepest wounds." He spoke of love's complexities, the exhilarating highs, the gut-wrenching lows, the daily choices that strengthened its foundation. He spoke of the importance of forgiveness in love, the willingness to see beyond imperfections and embrace the flawed beauty of human connection. "Love," he emphasized, his gaze meeting Cindy's, "is not a destination but a journey. It is a journey paved with challenges and triumphs, with moments of doubt and unwavering faith. But it is a journey worth taking, for it is in loving and being loved that we discover the true meaning of life." As the final notes of his sermon faded into the air, a palpable sense of hope filled Havenwood Community Church. The congregation rose to their feet, their applause a testament to the power of Pastor Greg's words, words that had touched their hearts and reminded them of the enduring power of love to heal, to redeem, and to inspire. The service concluded, and the congregation spilled out onto the church steps, their voices mingling in a harmonious chorus of greetings and well wishes. Cindy and Jeremy, hand in hand, made their way through the crowd, their faces reflecting the quiet joy that had taken root in their hearts. They paused at the bottom of the steps, bathed in the warm glow of the setting sun. Pastor Greg and Sandra stood beside them, their faces beaming with pride and a love that had only deepened through the trials they had faced together. As Cindy and Jeremy turned to face the future, hand in hand, They knew that their journey was far from over. There would be challenges ahead, moments of doubt, and the ever-present need for open communication and unwavering support. But in that moment, surrounded by the love of their family and the embrace of their community, they felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude. They had weathered the storm, emerged from the darkness, and were finally ready to embrace the promise of a new chapter. A chapter defined by love, forgiveness, and the enduring belief in the power of second chances.